Good afternoon, everyone, and just would like to give you a warm welcome to this afternoon session of our week of live sessions during the Community Wellbeing Month. My name is Nicole Vagel, and I work in the Office of Human Resources to support employee well-being on campus. And in the replacement of the annual wellness symposium that we typically have during this year, as all things COVID, our world has definitely changed. And so we adjusted the wellness symposium to be 31 days of community well-being, and moved all of our offerings to be virtual, spreading them out throughout the month of October. So we hope that you've been able to take advantage of some of the resources and pre-recorded talks, some good thoughtful questions and activities that are available on the interactive calendar. And I would just like to extend a big thank you to our OHR conferences team for making this month happen. We truly could not have done it without them. And then also to our partners in the Department of Family Medicine and Community Health, as well as our engagement, inclusion, and diversity partners within the Office of Human Resources. They were instrumental in helping us curate the content for this month. So today's session will be recorded. I'm sure you saw the little notification that popped up on your screen. This is so that we can allow participants who weren't able to attend the session today to view the recording at a later time. So that's just a little note about that. Also, if you have questions throughout the session today, please feel free to use the chat feature in Zoom. We would love to hear from you. So today's session, we're very happy to welcome Beth Turner from LifeMatters to guide us in learning about parenting during COVID-19. So Beth, I will hand it over to you.
Thank you, and welcome to all of you. I'm glad that you're here and chose this. Just a little quick look, at your screen today. This is kind of the big picture that we'll be talking about. I'll be more specific about all of this, but at the heart, of the training and your introduction to it is that, yes, it's about routine, but it's deeper than all of that. And I'll get to some reasons behind it. But in the end, we're really, trying to encourage a climate or an atmosphere within a family. It's just not about a checklist of things to do. It's about thinking really specifically about what's going on in my home right now and the atmosphere and the culture that I want, to establish. So that's the deeper reason behind the routine. Before we, get started, I do want to just check in with you to find out how you're doing. Just overall, how are you checking in today? You can use an emoji, to let me know how you're feeling. Would love to see that. So you can use, any of the chat feature, to show me how you're doing, or on a scale of 1 to 5, like 1 is great and 5 is 1 is not so great and 5 is brilliant. So let me know, how you're doing, and I'll give you a couple moments for that. Yes, and it is kind of a gloomy, day. Definitely fall is settling in, but glad to hear that people are excited to be here and wanting to learn and explore. Some people weighing in at 4 or 5, 3.5 out of 5. Brilliant. So glad to hear that you guys are, showing up as you are. No matter how you are, that is what's most important. More specifically, I just wanted to ask, how about parenting specifically, just to be honest? Oh, something. Yeah, somebody weighing in, hey, great, my kids had a nap, so I can dial in for all of this today. And how about specifically for parenting? How are you doing? Emoji, or weighing in again, telling me about how you're feeling on a scale of 1 to 5. It's really, like a 1 being, this has really been difficult, a lot of this completely unanticipated, and a 5 being like, hey, I think we've got some mastery here. So just quickly, I'll give you a couple of minutes just to weigh in about parenting specifically. I got to feel how you're doing generally. How about specifically? So yeah, kind of what I had expected, that some of the numbers starting to drop, a little bit. It is definitely a challenging time. So I just wanted to, to give you a chance to reflect on that. So keep weighing in, as we move ahead for right now. The other thing I want you to do is just for your own notation, just someplace, on a piece of paper. Yes, in screen time, we'll talk about that. That is because it's kind of a built-in convenience. And it doesn't require a lot from us, but no guilt, no shame, no blame in any of it. We'll get to that. So the other thing is just something to write down on a piece of paper right now, your why, about why you're here. There's a lot competing for your time and a lot of options for today. So just one thing that you really want to get out of today that'll help you connect. So I just want to give you, a moment for all of that, just to think about a why. The other thing I just want to encourage you with is just think about everything that you have to do in a day to organize yourself and your family. Every single day, about when you get up. Some of you, and I know I'm talking to a wide range of people here with kids of various ages, and some are doing hybrid learning, some are at school, some are full on home. But just think about all the prep that has to go into that on a regular basis and say, hey, you know what? My assumption right now is that I'm doing the best that I can, and my children or my child is doing the best that they can. In fact, we're all doing the best that we can, right now. So that we're going to start with that assumption. And then just to put in the fact that there is a pandemic, there is global political, economic, and racial unrest. So just to understand, like, hey, you know what? I do have a lot going on right now, and I'm doing the best that I can. So kind of a clean slate for today, no shame, no guilt, no anything like that. And just a chance to connect to some deeper meaning about why you're doing the things that you're doing. So today, we're looking at the impact of routines, kind of the science behind it, development of them, what works, what doesn't work, what it means to help having a child succeed, how important traction is, and also the essence of family meetings, what that might look like. And give you some ideas about how that might connect. Just a really quick poll right now to take a look at, looking at your own life and your own past history. What routine do you remember most? Kind of a poll that might be morning, it may have been bedtime, anything like that. So just go ahead and weigh in on some of the polls. About I'm sorry, you know what, that goes a little bit later. I'm ahead of myself. The question for here right now is, the heart of it is, do I believe that routines work? Yes, may, or nay, but I'm kind of willing to explore them. Sorry, team, I was ahead of myself on the poll though. So why am I asking this, even to begin with? It gives us an idea of what our mindset is, because my mindset is how I think about routines. And it also, kind of determines my attitude. If I really don't believe in them, then I might not be interacting with them. So that's just my reason behind the question. And again, no judgment, but just, hey, this is where I am today. This is my belief system, about my, about this. So we're going to give you just a couple of more seconds. Most of you believing, yes, that absolutely, I do, agree with it. So that's where we're going to sit. Yay, we're in a good start today. That's where we're going to sit. So looking ahead, this is what it's going to look like. These are kind of drilling down a little bit more about what we're going to be looking at. Family routines, defining them, and looking at all of these areas. So really what I want to express, to you is, I'm going to get out of this to see if I can share the results on that one. And that's where you guys sit for today. 75% saying yes, that they work. And now we want to get out of there. So beautiful. Back to play. Here we go. So family routines are planned and they're reoccurring activities. What I want to really mention, that it's not about the job. It's not about the specific task. It's about building special family time. It's about building connection in all of this. The other thing is that it absolutely promotes independence for children. It makes them feel empowered. So let me go back to understanding that what I want to really express in all of this is the way to connect as a family, about thinking about the messages that I want to send and the values that I'm trying to impart to my children. If values and the message don't drive things, then the task is. Then the child or the family is going to connect to the routine. They're going to connect to the task, or maybe even the outcome, but we're not going to connect one to another. So I'm thinking most of you are here to, yes, to establish some control and some routine, but more often also just to connect. So these are the benefits, having to do with family routines. And we're going to look at all of these, as we kind of drill down into some things. The bottom line is reducing stress. That is what it is. So we'll look at how that does. So a quick question for you, today, I just want to hear from you about your own experience and use your chat. This one was the first question I was beginning to ask at the start. And that is like, if you remember a routine, as a child, which one was it? Was it morning? Was it dinner? What was it that you remember and you maybe really connected to? So I just want to give you a couple of moments for that. Looking back, hey, I remember dinner times and this was set aside. And then depending upon your answer, I'm hearing school and I'm hearing bedtime. Just remember what it was like to connect in that way. Maybe some value that you connected to, that you felt, why it meant something to you, what you look forward to. Because whatever you remember from that time that was good, you can carry with you and impart to your own children right now. So I just want to give you a moment just to really inhabit that moment, the moments that you remember, as a kid, that you really connected to. So thank you. Dinner time, kind of in a bunch of different areas. So just something to back up some of the science about what we're talking about today. And this was a study. It was over a 50-year period of time for the Journal of Family Psychology, showing that routines, when implemented in a right and healthy way within the family, absolutely bolsters marital satisfaction. It gives children, especially teens, a personal sense of identity. The boundaries, and some people are mentioning also a spiritual factor, prayer time in the morning. So I want to get into some of the spiritual faith component too, that you may want to be, awakening or using as an opportunity with your children right now. Showed that that especially with routines, it helps kids know where they begin and others end. It starts to show boundaries with a lot of things. And it shows that when the kids are in preschool or early age, the better that they are socially and emotionally, it's a better predictor of how they are going to be when they move on into high school and adulthood. And a lot of this did have to do with routines. Health being linked to it, again, emotional well-being, nutrition, how am I feeding myself? How am I feeding my children? What is bedtime? What is dinner time? What does breakfast look like? Academic achievement, if I have boundaries, goals, aspirations, limitations, and routines at home. Oh, then when I go into a grid at school, I can understand, hey, that I have to operate somewhat within some boundaries and framework in here as well. The other thing is stronger family relationships. In all of this, especially when we're looking at everything that is going on right now, it is the ability to establish a routine where there is some predictability, where there is some level of control. And also our children are going to be picking up on how we are expressing things emotionally right now. So we're kind of like the barometer, the temperature setters, in our home. So by establishing routine, I'm kind of setting a temperature, a good temperature for the entire household, and establishing some predictability. Just two really quick samples of how simple this was. There was somebody that I was doing some work with, a lot going on in addition to everything else globally, nationally, and in the state, had gone through a divorce. She is with 3 children and they had to move recently into a new house. The kids are the age was between 8 and 17, 3 girls. Their simple thing in the midst of all of this was just to do a walk and talk. This was in their new neighborhood. All electronics were left at home, and the mom and the 3 girls would go for a walk. They would talk about their day. They would explore the new neighborhood. They would awaken to who their neighbors were and this place that they were living. This was the one thing that they could do right now. Another example that I recall was some people I was working with. One family could only really focus on dinner time right now. And they said, you know what, we're going to hunt the good. We're going to look for the good today because despite everything else that is going on right now, we can find what is good. That was the driving message for this family. Then when they got together at dinner time, they shared what was good. So that was some of the benefits of a routine and some really simple examples of it. Tips for developing them. I want to go back for you to think about, think about a routine that you do have that is going well. This is working. I'm satisfied to a certain measure. It's not perfect, but hey, we've got something started. Just to think about what that looks like right now for you and what that feels like. Then I just want you to share, and this again would be in the chat section. Think about like an attempt for a routine in the last 6 or 8 months that you attempted, as a family or as a parent, and it just didn't go great. It just, failed miserably, epically. It might even be marginally humorous right now. And just tell me and share why you think it maybe did not go that well. So just in the chat section, take a couple minutes to say, I know what worked. And I also remember what didn't work so well. So I just want to hear about some things why maybe that attempted routine didn't go so well. So just to be honest, and then I'll share some of the top reasons why routines can sometimes not go that great. So go ahead and share some things if you think about something that was an attempt and then maybe didn't go so well. So some reasons why routines, when we're starting off really diligently and trying to establish a routine, why it may not have worked that well. A lot of times we simply aim too high. That might be it. We're shooting for perfection. Another thing is that we're being really rigid. It's too specific. One task followed after another. So maybe we're too rigid, or maybe we're aiming too high and it's too specific. The other thing that can set us up for failure is that it simply is outcome based. It's all about the result. It's all about how well we did. And that can be a setup for failure. So outcome based can absolutely cause some complications. It also isn't helpful if we do it without communication. There's one family I've done some work with, and she and her husband are at home full time with 2 young children. And they said that it was communicating that was central with the kids and listening, and the husband and the wife in this particular situation, because they both process what's going on differently. So if we don't communicate, that can also be a setup. And the other thing is if what we're doing is done without being attached to a value system. So those are some of the pitfalls when we're developing a routine, and we're aiming too high, we're being too rigid, we're not building in gaps for imperfection or things that don't go well. We're not communicating and we're not being value driven. So some ways, this is an overview for our time ahead for the next, probably 5-10 minutes, or so. The thing in all of this, we'll look at why it's important to involve all of family. We're talking the difference between expectation and agreement. I'll be talking about that. About gradual improvement, rewarding. What does that look like? What does flexibility look like? And also not about how many times we fall down, but how many times we get back up, right? So we just get back up and we start the next day. So in the end, I just want you to think about the messages that we're going to be sending our families when it has to do with routine. Let's say that it has to do with homework, dinner time, and maybe bedtime. So the messages might be, hey, that we believe in schoolwork. We believe that is a foundation value system because it drives self-discipline. It drives motivation. It drives an interest and a passion for creativity and learning. If we might set up a mealtime routine, the message underneath that is we value connecting as a family. And the other thing might be for bedtime routine. Some of you mentioned bedtime routine. The impartation there is we value rest, we value restoration, and that's the messages that we want to be sending, to our families and things like that. So the points that I want to really hit on here is involving all of the families. This is a communication system. This means everybody at a human core level, we want to be seen, we want to be heard, we want what we have to be valued, what we bring to the table to be valued, and we all want to be part of something bigger. That is innate, even to the youngest child, this sense of community involving. So involve everybody. The other thing what I want to talk about briefly is expectations versus agreement. An expectation is kind of under the table. It's what we do kind of as parents. Like, this is my expectation of you. This is my expectation of how your room is going to look. This is my expectation of how grades are going to look. This can set us up for failure. So I would invite agreements. This means everything is on the table. So an agreement is we're at the table and everything is on the table. And then I agree, and then my child agrees, like, yes, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to proceed. An expectation is, it might be my expectation, but my kid has no idea what that is. So establishing them and agreeing on what they are. So that's the second one there, understanding the difference between an expectation and an agreement. The other thing is just to be, that we're looking for traction, we're looking for growth, and we're going to be celebrating those moments, little tiny improvements. So if we're starting small, then we're celebrating those milestones. If we have older kids, we're just improving them. We're shoring up the foundation and the groundwork here. So just to know that's 30 to 60 days. That's the reality of really developing a routine, so it becomes automatic. And when we're starting to establish them, just to know that you're plowing new ground. And anytime we plow new ground, it is challenging in the beginning. And it's hard because it's new land. You think about like planting a garden and digging up the soil and removing the rocks and the roots and everything else. That's sometimes what it's like establishing a routine. And as we go, the soil has become more hospitable and more accepting. It's receiving all of those seeds. So just understand it's gradual. One other thing I want to talk about briefly is about the reward. This is the chance. We can look at this as an opportunity or as an interruption, but the opportunity is, hey, you know what? Maybe I get to know my kid a little bit better right now. What really motivates them, and to understand that what their language is. So do I want to be rewarding self-discipline? Do I want to be rewarding creativity? Do I want to be rewarding the motivation? So think about that, and then how each child connects. Do they need words of affirmation? Do they need to be held? Do they appreciate a small gift that could be given to show, that they're really doing, a good job, depending upon the age? And in the end, there's not enough that I can say about allowing for flexibility. Otherwise, the child or the family becomes stuck to the thing. We become stuck to the structure instead of the meat and the heart of why we're doing a routine. So that, again, is just a reminder. And the other thing is that not giving up and not saying, oh, this so didn't work well, so we're just going to chuck the whole thing. It's like, no, maybe this didn't. Maybe there was something funny in it. And using a family meeting to connect and say, hey, you know what? We're going to revamp this thing and we're going to give it another go. Maybe this didn't work so well. What didn't work very well? And now we're going to try it, try it again to do it the next time. And we're going to take everybody's voice, into consideration and see what we can do. So these are some ideas, for routines. The science behind all of this says that it is better to think about categories or realms in your life. And these are just some suggestions that are on your screen. You may have different ones, but the science is like, if it connects around a realm or an area or a category in our life, it's better and more effective than just simply listing a list of tasks or things to get done. So these are some suggestions, for you. And before we begin, just a really quick poll. If you have attempted to do a routine, where do you usually hit the roadblocks? So just a poll for you for a couple of moments here. The biggest, this is the old one. So we're going to go to the new one. The biggest challenge area is morning, the homework or the school realm, the bedtime routine, or, hey, right now I'm just having a hard time all the time. So I just want to give you an area to kind of look at and find out how we're weighing in on this. I would suspect, that the homework and the schoolwork, and it's being honest, like, hey, right now it's just about all the time. So just a couple more seconds while we leave this up. And it looks like, right now, it looks like homework and things revolving around school happens to be the biggest challenge, right now. And I'm just going to put these up there. So that's the way that it looks. This is all of your information, that you just gave to me today. So the biggest area being homework and school. The other ones seem to be pretty balanced out. So I'm just going to get out of that and go back here. Okay. And we also want to pull number 2 out of there. Beautiful. Okay. And some of you also are just responding, by the chat section, as well. So I just want to review these things with you in just a couple of minutes. Again, that most of these the routines are again set up for independence, for self-discipline, self-control, and also self-esteem. The idea behind the routine often, as it progresses, is that the child learns not just about themselves, but then about how they fit into a family structure. So it starts off about them, then it's like, oh, what I do impacts a family structure. And then what happens even beyond my family structure? How does this impact like the neighborhood that I live in, the community, the school situation, maybe the faith community that I work in, the volunteers realm that my family may operate in, even if it's on a reduced or a different schedule right now. So those are some things just to take into consideration. And I want to start, with morning. If you do not have, a routine, one way to start is in the morning, because how we start our day can also really determine how we move about the day and how we end our day. So morning being central. When I speak to a lot of people, they're really saying that morning is central. It may not be the most difficult part, and I'll get to the homework part, but the morning routine being central, again, because it sets the tone for the day. The key part of this, and I have an example of a woman that I've done some work with about nighttime prep. She is at home. She and her husband are at home with 9 kids between the ages of 21 and 8. 3 of them were supposed to be, in a college setting, but because of everything going on, they're not, or they're in a hybrid setting. That's a lot to manage. They've got 3 or 4 refrigerators. They've got 2 washing machines, 2 dryers, and a lot of cars, and a lot of people coming and going. So her thing was nighttime prep. Whatever I can do to get things done the night before, however I can get my kids involved in that, and they each know what they need to do. So this means, my lunch is packed, whether I'm going to school or not. I know what I'm going to be having for lunch. That's going to be set aside maybe in the fridge, that the breakfast table might be set, that the protein powder or the oatmeal or whatever it is, it's set out. The other thing is that if a bag has to be packed, a backpack, if it's a hybrid situation for school, or if there is daycare going on, that bag is packed the night before. Clothes are set out, including socks and shoes. So there isn't anything last minute to say, oh my gosh, I don't have this. Where is this? So it kind of reduces some of that pandemonium. So these are some of the things, that can be done for nighttime prep. And the reason behind the morning part is, again, just because I'm starting well. So I'm going to be, hoping that I end well as well. The alarm clock is something that younger children appreciate as they starting to grow up and be more mature. They have their own alarm clock. They set it. They're responsible for getting up. More than one kid, more than one alarm clock. Setting a positive tone. This decides or kind of rests on me as a parent. What do I need to do in the morning time to fill up or to refuel? So when I greet my family, that I can do it in a way that is edifying and encouraging, like, good morning, I'm glad to see you. How are you? Let's talk about what we're going to be doing today, rather than wear your shoes, wear your socks, what's your lunch, would you do this? How come you didn't do that? That's mostly, how we start the day. So by nighttime prep, people are setting their alarm clocks, assuming responsibility for that. And also me setting a positive tone, because I've had a chance to kind of do some of my own morning routine before I interact with anybody else. The other thing that is work for people is to have a chart that the child can connect with. Maybe they can use stickers to say which one they've done. Maybe it's some mark off. Another thing that has helped people is to have a child with a picture of the child actually doing the task, actually brushing teeth, hanging up clothes. It's inspiring. It's connecting to themselves, actually seeing them do the work, that it can be done. So that is those are some suggestions, or offerings, for the morning. And those are offerings underneath the chart. The child maybe can determine the order, but these things need to be done before you come and eat breakfast, or before we get in the car, or before we do this. That would be their checklist. There is one other thing that I want to mention that is pervasive throughout, especially when it comes to older children, and I know it can be a challenge. This is a part where we have to decide as parents, especially if the children are older, about cause and effect and about consequences. If an alarm isn't set and the child doesn't get up on time, I have to decide as a parent, when am I going to intervene and how much am I going to rescue? And how much am I going to allow the situation to teach my child to say, hey, next time you're going to maybe want to set the alarm because look at the cascade of events that didn't go well. So this is an invitation, no matter what these routines are, as a parent, at some point, I have to have my child assume responsibility for their involvement in it. Because if I keep rescuing, or I keep fixing, or I keep doing the lunch, or driving the book, or setting up the Zoom meeting, or communicating to the teachers when the child really should be, then I'm not carrying a strong message. So again, this is every parent's, own challenge to find, how far do I want to let my child drop to learn a consequence. But again, that is teaching, an opportunity to instill some meaning, into your family, if that is a value, about responsibility and assuming it. So that is just an idea, about the morning. For the homework, and I did hear this, just some ideas that have, worked for other people. And if you have one, go ahead and offer it, because it was a hot topic. One thing that has really, helped was to designate specific space for homework right now. There's a family I was working with. They had a son whose bedroom was in the basement. They're like, absolutely not. Then you're not spending all day virtually in a basement, on a computer. You're up, you're in the dining room, you're part of the family, your schoolwork is laid out, your, pens, pencils, everything that you need are there. It's a designated workspace. Another thing that has worked for some parents, especially if they're working from home, would be to have the child come into their workspace and say, this is where I do this work. This is my computer. This is what I'm going to be doing today. This pile means this. This pile means that. This is my phone. So it's not some unknown territory for them. So the child can come in, see what's going on. I've had parents set aside little areas within their own office space for the child to actually do their own work from this time to that time. And then they kind of share things about what's going on, but they have parameters about how much time they talk. So that was one thing, to have kind of a shared working space with a child. The other thing is that when it was time, the parent had to be on a webinar, they had to be doing a Zoom meeting, they were having, talking with clients or teaching classes, then the child was in their own workspace. Then they set up a system outside their door where they could exchange notes, throughout the day. There was an inbox and an outbox. Like an inbox, this was the work. This was maybe their assignments for the day that they needed to get done. When they were done, then they knew to take them out of the box, do the work, and then put them in the in the outbox then, because they were finished. That was one thing that had helped. The other thing was also that helped families was how they dressed. The parents were like, even if I put on a pair of shoes and cross the threshold into my home office space, it just put me in a different mind frame. And they would teach their kids the same thing. This is my workspace, so I'm going to get work done in here. This is how I'm going to show up. One thing having to do with work time or homework time, one of my own kids, I just have one, left at home, and it's 100% virtual high school learning. He was like, what, this is just the worst part of all the learning wrapped up together, because I don't see friends. I can't go out for lunch. There's no social interaction and a lot of screen time. So it was working with him to find out about, knowing him was about traction. that I have downtime between classes, so I'm getting homework done then because I don't want to do it at the end of the day. There are also white days. For some of Madison Public, what am I going to be doing on my white day? Maybe those are days and times to get work done. The other thing is to consider energy, not time, with your child. Finding out when, or them being aware of their peak energy times and doing the work then. Because at the end of the day, and they've been on a computer all day long, that may absolutely not be the time to try to tackle homework to any measure. They're already tired, way too much screen time. So when is his or her or their energy peak? And that's when the time to look at the homework. And also to consider breaks. What is a break and what does relaxation look like for every child? Do they need to be outside? Is that a break? Do they need to read? Do they need to decompress? Do they need to be alone? Those are some other things, to take into consideration. But knowing how each child does that. And feel free, to offer anything in the chat section about what has helped for you specifically when it comes to homework and organizing schoolwork for your child and how that gets done. Offer that because that might be, helpful, for everybody, involved when it comes to the homework. Mealtime. Again, the message here is like, what am I trying to send? What is the value that I'm instilling in my kids? The sharing, the prep, and the tasks, the message might be, I'm not, as a mom or a dad, that I'm not here to do all of it. We're a family unit. We contribute no matter what those dynamics look like. This might mean that some children go shopping, depending upon the age, and they bring they do the groceries and they come back. That might be some of the prep. Small kids, what can they do with a sense of accomplishment, and then to reward them, with accolades or a, nice job, setting the table, putting a glass, picking out, a salad dressing, putting it on the table. Eliminating distractions, central for a lot of families. Some people absolutely leave all electronics, even in another room that's not even in the kitchen, because if they're not on silence or they're not silenced, or somebody forgot something, it's not like, oh, I can suddenly check while it's there. So all electronics, are outside of that realm, and also including reading material. How much ever we want our kids to read, that's not the time or the place to do it. The sharing of the day, just a routine, like, what went well, what was surprising. The other family I told you about was hunting the good, looking for things, despite everything that's going on in the world today, let's share something that is good. And then how about cleanup? What does that look like? If people prepped or shopped, then maybe somebody else does the cleanup. But again, the message and what all of this says, overall. And I do understand, especially, with kids as they get older, how challenging it is to have a specified meal time. That might be in some ways a little bit easier right now, because I know sports are not as, all consuming, and after school clubs, might not be as challenging as before, but there might be other things that are in the way. So it's like, hey, what else could we do? Maybe I have to look at a mealtime frame. Maybe it's earlier than we would normally eat. Maybe it's later. Maybe it's not dinner. Maybe we only can do one dinner, a week, and we do a brunch or a lunch on the weekend. What does that look like? So that could be, something else that is impactful. The other thing that people have said during this time is that they've become, a little bit more adventurous, to say that maybe we're going to be connecting out. When we can meet, in a restaurant that is open, maybe that we can meet there, share a meal. We could do delivery, we could do takeout. I also have, other families that work with making it more of an adventure. We don't eat Asian typically, we don't eat Middle Eastern, we don't eat Greek. So let's mix this up. Let's go for an adventure and let's shop differently, and then let's prep differently. So that was the other option, is also to change the order. Maybe it's not a dinner time, maybe it's just a meal, and maybe it's breakfast, and maybe it's on the weekend, or maybe it's a lunch, and that lunch is out to eat occasionally, but then grounding, to find out how to come home and be rooted and grounded within that time. Bedtime, there's a lot of bandwidth on this, a lot of variability about this. The underlying message is, what do you want to be saying to your children? Not like you have to go to bed, but you get to go to bed. You get to rest. The instilling things in this would be, how do I want to model this as a parent? If I think that of my kids, and this is not any way, a judgment, but right now our kids are really watching us to find out what we do, and they're going to be replicating our behavior. So if I decompress by watching TV, then I may want to do that where that might not be necessarily modeling that for them, because that's what they're going to want to do. So what do I, oh, okay. So I don't want to, well, I don't, anyway. So I was rustling some papers. So I hope that is not distraction. So anyway, thank you for that heads up. The bedtime, again, would be a way just to express and even to teach kids what happens when we rest. Between the hours of midnight and 4 is most of the regeneration time, how my body regenerates, what happens to our cells, what happens to our brain, what happens to our body during that time. So establishing a regular one allows them to learn what it does for them and how much better they feel the next day. Allowing for prep time. What does this look like? This means that it's not, it would be a steady ramp down for them. It's dishes are done, meal is done. This starts to send messages to our body that it's time to quiet down and be still, and allow the child each step of the way to kind of decompress all the way to that. The other thing is to keep it simple, not to have 8 or 10 tasks at night that have to get done, and reconnecting to what is most central. If it is a really busy day and not everything can get done, what is really central at the end? Is it central that teeth get brushed, that faces get washed, that clothes get put out for the night before, or is a bedtime story more central? So what does this send as a message in the end? If it's been a really busy day and you're getting home really late, what is really the central thing that you want done, at that time? The other thing with all of this is creating a space, in the bedroom that is really inviting, for the kid. I've had families, had to invest in blackout drapes right now for kids because of sleeping schedules being a little different, masks, just because of being able to sleep better. Some families have looked into, aromatherapy, stretch, yoga before bed, depending upon how kids engage. And that's been really helpful because that's been a decompressing time, as well. So all of these things are ways to send messages about how beneficial and helpful, it is to have a regular sleep schedule. Just a personal testimony. One of my older kids is home with some college plans kind of on hold. And he decided it was great to go and work out at the gym when nobody was there, which meant that was midnight. And then would roll in, like at around, 2 or 2:30, and then decide to make an entire meal at that time. No. So, I didn't want to be waking up. My husband didn't want, like, what's going on in the kitchen? Why is somebody cooking chicken at 2:30 in the morning? That didn't go well. So we just went to him and said, hey, listen, if you want to work out at that time, then you're going to have to, pay for your gym membership. And some other things that were still expected of him. Anyway, he reevaluated, said, no, first of all, it's not great for me, to be working out that late. I know that I still have to be getting up at 8 to get some things done. So that rerouted him, So just a personal testimony about having to face some bedtime struggles with kids that were older, and then still at home. So those were some things with that. The overall chore list, just to keep in mind, is to make sure that it's short, that it's age appropriate, that it's specific, that a child can understand exactly what it means and not to expect perfection. So I do know, some parents, when it comes to this, would be that one mom would have boxes, things that were labeled for the kids, to know what they needed to do that day. So that was one way of her doing it. Another way was, having charts that were up, and ways to connect, like and then to model it for the kid, for the child, like the trash goes in the trash can, have them do it. And then, appropriate reward, an appropriate accolade at that time. When it comes to the perfection would be, maybe after the child has done the specific chore for a couple of times, then maybe you could ramp up the bar or raise the bar and ramp up the activity to say, oh, we could probably, let's try this. Oh, that looks a little bit better. So let's try this. So that's what we mean by chores, and kind of raising the bar and not expecting, perfection. And in the end, what is really the message that we're trying to send, in all of it. When it comes to family meetings, this is outside of the list of everything, that we're having to do. This is the big picture. This is the big picture to come together. Maybe it's around a small meal. Maybe it's around a game. Maybe it's around a Zoom connection with other family members, but that it's scheduled and it's set aside. To bring some levity, to bring some joy to it, to make it fun. This is also a chance for everybody to be heard, to bring their insight and their wisdom and their voice to the table. This might be, what are we going to be doing for the holidays, this year? What do we want to be looking at for that way? If there is a vacation, what might that look like? How are things going right now with school, with how we're doing things, about life in general? This gives us a chance just to connect on that level. And again, this is the way to divvy up teamwork. This would be for each family member to know each other's strengths, what we bring to the table, how to call them out in one another, like, oh, Joe, you do a really good job at this. Let's have you work on this. Somebody else is brilliant at Excel spreadsheets, because that's important for an upcoming family event. So you're going to be doing this. And I also know the challenge of making things really short and sweet, especially when it comes to teens, not to be belaboring things or making them longer than they need to be, but just a quick connect. This is what we value. This is where we need to be and how we're going to be encouraging, one another. So, are we, is our value system about connecting? Is it about relating? Is it about listening? Or is it about planning? So again, just the overall messages, that we want to encourage everybody to connect with. So the success, we talked in the beginning about things that get in the way of the success, and that is, overshooting, being too rigid, expecting perfection, being too specific about things, and not taking age into consideration, not taking communication into consideration. So at the heart of everything, we are trying to build traction, and we're trying to build success incrementally. So making sure that everything is age appropriate, using those checklists and a calendar. Kids at various ages enjoy timers, and a lot of younger kids do not have a concept about what time is. So having them be able to either set one on the stove, or a small one, or even overturning an hourglass to understand, what does 3 minutes look like? What does 5 minutes look like? So those kind of things can be really empowering, for a child as well. The other thing is the organization. Again, I just want to go back to this, is to have the child go through and say, this is what organized looks like for me. It's a good starting point, and that's where you roll from. And then again, you keep raising the bar, about the organization. And I did start to say this before, but I wanted to bring it back around. There is a family I've done some work with where a mom keeps separate bins, and they're labeled, it might be trucks, it might be blocks, it might be, crayons, colors, creativity. And those they're in a box, each separate unto their own topic. And each child can have 1 or 2 boxes out at the same time. But when they're done, either they trade, or those boxes get packed up and then they get put away. Then they get to select something else. So it's a way of managing, the day, and not to have too many things out all at once going on. So that was one thing about organization. And one thing, about the rewarding, of the effort is, a chance to know every child's language. Again, do they need words, words of affirmation? Do they need accolades? Do they need physical touch? Do they need just to have specific eye contact with you at that moment? Do they need, a small reward as a gift? I would highly encourage not things to be linked to food as a reward system, especially when the kids, are younger. The other thing as the child gets older, the encouragement is to not only focus on the external rewards or awards, but asking them how it made them feel, because that's building an internal center of gravity, for them to say, you know what, I felt really good about that, and how or why, what did that feel like, for you? Maybe they can draw a picture if they're really young. If they're older, they can absolutely use words and start to name emotions. So this is another thing when it comes to, looking at rewarding, efforts, and being able to tap into each child's own specific needs, at that time. Things just to remember, from today, going back to, your why of all of this, and let me know if you got the why, if the training did supply you and meet the why. But involving all of the family, again, this is about having everybody have a voice, to be seen, to be heard, and to contribute something bigger, to something bigger than themselves. To get away from any shame, blame, and being vulnerable and open in this time, that it's not about perfection. It's about starting and keeping going and then reevaluating. If it's not going well, it's simply feedback. It's not failure. It's just data. I can change it. Rewarding the effort allows me to be specific and strategic and intentional with every child to meet them where they are. The flexibility teaches the value, like, hey, things change and we're going to be okay. We're adaptable and we can roll with it. And then we're going to be okay the next day. Not giving up, not like, oh, that was not a good routine. That didn't go well. That didn't go well today. It's okay. We're going to erase, delete, clean up, and then start again. And then also to enjoy the little things. The other thing in all of this is just to be aware of what we're modeling for our kids, because they're reading us really closely. So if I'm having a really emotionally charged day, how do I let go of that? How do I release that? How do I process that? So it's not necessarily, always in front of them. And if I do have, an eruption, there's some work that I do, professionally, in connection with therapists that are working with families. And one of the most powerful things the therapist mentioned that a child can experience is a parent apologizing. Listen, I'm sorry. It models assuming responsibility. It models naming an emotion. And it also models like, these are some changes that I'm going to make. So apologizing is a really powerful thing, and also, expresses, the ability and a chance for forgiveness. The other thing is just allowing ourselves, to say, hey, how do I fill up every single day? What's the fuel that I need to do in order to put effort into prep time, into routines, into dinner planning, into meeting my kids where they are? So that is another thing just to understand about how, we fill up individually. Before one last quick poll, I want to also leave you, and I'll see if I can put this, I'm going to put his name in the chat section. His name is Peter Levine. And he does an awful lot of work with somatic work. And there are really good things, YouTube videos, books, and that kind of thing, just to be able to, ways to hold your child, ways to hold yourself, during times of anxiety or uncertainty. So it's a lot more body connection versus everything getting sorted out in our minds. So, a possible, resource for you, for Peter Levine. One simple thing is just even holding yourself opposite hand to opposite shoulder, any sort of cross body movement, even this for ourselves, and any cross things like this with a child, very soothing, very comforting, very reassuring. So he does have some good resources for all of that. And my question, to you is just knowing how you refill. And kind of that poll or that assessment had to do with, how do you refill? Do you have to do something physically? Do you need to do something mentally, emotionally, Or do you fill up spiritually? So just take a quick look at that and take a, just to understand what that is and how you connect to that and do it and know what that ritual might look like, what that routine might look like. Physical might be, a bike ride, exercise, mental, emotional. This could be writing, it could be therapy, it could be counseling. The spiritual, it could be prayer, it could be meditation. And it's pretty split. This is how most of you guys are reporting right now between the physical and the emotional and the mental refueling. So that's the way that those things look for you guys today. So I'm going to get out of that. And if there's anything else, please let me know. Any questions, or comments. Please do otherwise know that LifeMatters is available for you, 24/7, whether it's on this topic, if it's on legal, if it's on emotional, mental health, financial, anything to do professionally as well, just to know those resources, are available to you as well. And before we go, before we wrap up, I know you've got a lot of other things going on today. We've just got about another about minute or so. So just let me know, how are you leaving right now? If there's one takeaway, let me know what that is, or a starting point for you. We've got about, less than 2 minutes left. Where do you think that you might start, or how, or where, in what realm do you feel motivated? So just leave it in the chat. I feel more motivated emotionally. I feel more motivated to do, the homework realm, the morning routine realm. So just let me know. So some just, encourage, some people saying, hey, there are some parts I'm going to apply to my routine. Yeah, just to make sure, go back and connect to your why, about why you showed up, and that make sure that what was presented fed that for you. So I just want to encourage you, and I'd like to hear, at some point, how things are going, for you. But just to encourage you, you're doing well. The assumption is that, hey, I'm doing the best I can. My kids are doing the best that I can, and I've got a good starting point. So thank you. I've enjoyed being with you today. So the best with you, for the rest of the day, and all the good nuggets that you'll be learning. So anyway, thank you. And I look forward to hearing from any stories about how things work out for you. So all the best to you.
Beth, thank you so much. And for everyone that joined us this afternoon, thank you. I know that we had a lot of great information. So looking forward to hearing and seeing what people apply. So Beth, again, thank you. If anyone has any questions, we'll hang around for a couple minutes, but we'll be closing down the Zoom meeting here. So have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.